Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mark Masechko from the Miami University Alumni Association, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar. Today, we have a chance to hear from a Miami alumnus who successfully made his way into the sports writing and broadcasting world. Joining us today is Tom Downey, class of 2015. Welcome, Tom.
Happy to be here, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. So Tom is the lead writer and on-air analyst for Chat Sports, covering all sports with a focus on the NFL. He is from Cincinnati, Ohio, but now lives in Dallas, Texas, and he graduated from Miami in 2015 with a degree in journalism and sports leadership and management. Tom's favorite teams are the Dallas Cowboys, the Cincinnati Reds, and the Cincinnati Bengals. And his favorite sports experience was going to the 2013 Final Four in Atlanta. So once again, welcome, Tom, and thanks so much for taking time to join us today.
Of course.
Questions were collected during registration, and Tom will address some of those throughout the webinar this afternoon. You'll also have the option to ask live questions during the webinar by clicking on the Ask a button at the bottom of your screen. Please note that in the interest of time, we may not get to every single question, but we'll do our very best. Today's webinar will last about an hour, including time for those questions and answers. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. You ready to go, Tom?
Yep.
All right, let's start by talking a little bit about your time here at Miami and how you got to where you are now. So why did you choose Miami, and what activities did you participate in when you were here?
I picked Miami. I was looking for a place that was a little bit far away from home, but not wildly far away from home. Visited a couple of different campuses and fell in love with the Miami campus. And they had FBS sports, which was a bigger deal for me because I didn't want to go to a small school with a small sports standpoint, because I knew I wanted to do something in sports. I didn't really know what that was. So I ended up doing the double major in journalism and sports leadership and management. And then I did Miami student early on my freshman year. And then I think it was either early sophomore or late freshman year, did the WMSR student radio as well, both with the sports station on that side, and fell in love with being able to write and broadcast. And that just led me to where I am today.
That's awesome. I too participated in WMSR, but not on the sports side. Yeah. So it was fun. I had a lot of fun with it.
It was.
So Tom, what drew you to journalism?
I started with the volleyball beat writing at the Miami student. Wouldn't say I was great by any stretch of the imagination. Then the hockey beat writer job came open, and I'm like, oh, I'll just apply for it to let them know that I'm serious about this. And then they gave it to me, which kind of got me going on that path. I liked the writing. It kept me around sports, and being able to write about various sports is a dream job for me. So pretty easy there.
That's awesome. So we have a question actually that came in from Kara, who's class of 2024. So she's a current student. And she asked, beginning as a writer, was your ultimate goal always to work in the sports media industry, or did you ever consider any other career path?
I mean, I love the play-by-play aspect in terms of like not writing, being able to do on air. That didn't, present itself with a quick job opening. Working for a team was always intriguing, but I had the background with the sports media. That's the job that presented itself early on, and it was still in sports. So I kind of made the decision to pursue that one. I mean, I think working for a team itself, an NFL team, would be awesome, but that's not exactly an easy path to find yourself down.
Sure. So walk us through your career path and leading to today. So what steps did you take to get to the position you are in now?
So I was an intern for Chat Sports while I was at Miami doing written content side of stuff. That job ended up popping open a full-time job with Chat Sports when we were based in San Francisco. Not long after I graduated, obviously I'd done the internship stuff for them. So I took that job out in San Francisco. We were there for 2 years, I believe. At the time, that was a writing only job. And then, we began to experiment with Facebook Live and kind of began to pivot the business really full time now into video. And now it's become the YouTube side when we made the move down here to where I am now in Dallas. So it was a different path, a writing focused job that ended up being spun off into a video on air job, which, I had the radio background, and that served me very well from my time at Miami.
Awesome. So remember, those of you who are watching us today live, make sure you click on that Ask a Question button. That's where you can make comments or ask questions that we'll get to here in a little bit. So let's transition a little bit now, Tom, to talk a little bit about your current position and the sports industry as you see it as a whole. So what does a typical day look like for you?
Very much depends on what's going on. If for live events, that's how the sports calendar ends up getting dictated. So if there's a Cowboys game, my day looks a little bit different. But that's 1 out of 5 work days. The general day is normally I'm in the office around 9 a.m. and I'll spend my first couple hours getting my shows ready for that day. We've got a couple different YouTube channels, a couple different things that we provide video content for. So I tend to build those out in the morning, get my script ready, get my talking points ready, and build our graphics as well. We use a program called Livestream that allows us to input information into Google Sheets, and it will, with the way we've designed them, end up presenting it a little bit more in terms of a fancy look and a more professional look than just a guy on camera. Film that stuff, and then I've also got what we call the post-production side of it in terms of getting our YouTube headlines, our thumbnails, our descriptions, our tags, getting those put out on the channel, putting it on my Twitter, on Facebook, etc. So typical day tends to end up looking like, depending on the length of the videos, anywhere from 3 or 4 to maybe even 10 if they're a lot shorter videos. So it is a well-oiled content engine these days.
Yeah, gotcha. Probably like most of us, our days are based on what the heck is happening in the world.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Stuff happens, late at night, and gotta do the video because we're doing the news stuff. So it's not a 9 to 5 job. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I can understand that. So Tom, how do you stay up to date with what's going on in the sports industry?
I mean, obviously I focus heavily on the NFL, but that's not the only thing I do. Cowboys, a lot of different NFL teams, NBA stuff as well, and try to stay abreast of what's going on. Hockey, MLB, golf as well. Twitter is a very good usage for that. TweetDeck in particular, being able to see from the major accounts the news as it's going in. I am in the end a sports addict, so I'm always watching whatever's on TV, and I've got my podcast that I listen to as well, my drive to and from work, to help keep me updated on the stuff that I'm not able to necessarily watch or study live.
Gotcha. So kind of a little bit more detail here into the sports industry. So this is a really interesting question, I think. So which sports do you see having an upward trend in global popularity? For example, so what do you think the biggest global sports will be in the next 5-10 years or so? And then inversely, what sports do you see declining and becoming less popular?
I mean, soccer and basketball have a really strong worldwide foothold. I don't think that's going to necessarily change anytime soon. I know there's been attempted accusations of football's a dying sport, but the numbers do not bear that out whatsoever. And the NFL is trying very hard to grow globally with their European English games once a year, the occasional Mexico City game as well. So I think here more in the States, I think you'll see hockey get a bit of an uptake because they're finally back with ESPN, and that will benefit them. Still a little bit worried about baseball because their leadership's not particularly great. But I still think football, basketball will remain the kings here, at least in America, and I think growing forward as well overseas.
Well, as a hockey fan, I'm excited that it's back on ESPN. I think that's going to help push that sport a little bit. So I'm excited for that to come back. So
TV deals matter, and that NHL TV deal was just horrible.
Yes, well, I'm excited. So looking forward to that starting again soon. So from your perspective as a content strategy manager, how do you view the future landscape of sports media changing as legalized sports betting continues to emerge into the forefront around the country?
You got to get on board with the sports betting if you're not already. It's kind of adapt or die to an extent, and the sports betting stuff is going to be incredibly important. I think you're going to see an impact in a similar fashion that fantasy football has made an impact on the sport over the years. The sports betting side of it, as it becomes more and more legal, is going to be critical. From just what you cover, because there's going to be a lot of interest in, okay, who do I bet on this week, whatever. Also from a potential revenue opportunity, having a sportsbook partner like we do at Chat Sports leads to more revenue and income as well, and that allows you to grow, et cetera. So the sports betting, the sportsbook side of it is incredibly important.
So basically get on board or get left behind.
Exactly.
Gotcha. So what would you say is the future of mid-major football? Speaking of Miami and the mid-major, what do you think the future of mid-major football and men's basketball is?
I think basketball is in a little bit better shape, just because I think that the format will stay a little bit more consistent in terms of you'll still have the NCAA tournament. The mid-majors and the lesser majors have kind of been what they've been for a while. Football-wise, man, I don't know. There's the gap between the haves and the have-nots of the power, I guess I'll call it 4.5 conferences, because the Big 12, I don't know how much longer they'll be around for. The gap between the SEC, the Big 10, the Pac-12 to an extent, the ACC, and then everyone else, I think even the American Athletic Conference and certainly the Mid-American Conference as well, that gap is massive now. And there aren't that many programs in college sports that actually turn a profit, and certainly Miami has not been one of them. But being able to go on the road and play a Notre Dame, for example, and pocket $1 million or $2 million has always been an important part of the budget side of it. I don't know necessarily what the future holds. I think that the gap is going to continue to widen between those major Power 5 programs, and I think that the normal college football, what we've been watching the past 10 years, is very much changing. So I still think there will be Mid-American Conference football. I don't know if that will be necessarily in the same true tier, even what it is right now compared to the Power 5. The Power 5 at some level, I think at some point, whether that's 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, will kind of start to leave the smaller schools behind. And maybe you end up seeing almost like I'll call it FBSA and FBSB type of deal, where we just know the gap is different. And it looks very different in terms of the way it's presented from a bowl perspective, and maybe even see the group of 5 try to set up their own little mini tournament like the FCS does to help ensure that those TV contracts still keep coming through. Obviously, the MAC's got a great deal with MACtion. That's a big deal for them with ESPN. But the TV contracts, which not sure are going to be as big the next time around, just with the popularity of streaming and everything. That's still going to be important for those Mid-American, mid-majors to have. We're seeing that the TV contracts have massive impact on the SEC. That's why Texas and Oklahoma are leaving. So the ESPN was really the one who kind of finagled that whole deal. So a bit of a non-answer, but it's going to look different moving forward.
Gotcha. So again, remember, those of you who are watching, feel free to submit those live questions. Hit that ask a question button down at the bottom of your screen. And that's where you can ask those questions, which Tom will answer for us. But before we get to those questions, we'd love for you to give some advice to current students and alumni who are watching right now. So what piece of advice would you give to someone who's trying to break into the industry today? And what is your most important piece of advice for someone who wishes to pursue a career in sports broadcasting?
I think maybe my piece of advice is fairly similar for both. Effort and commitment really matter from that perspective. It is not a high-paying industry, unless you're Stephen A. Smith. It is not a low effort, low normal work hour. You're not going to work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. You're going to have a lot of weekends that you're working because the sports calendar is going to dictate the schedule to you. So I think the drive and effort have to be there. If you don't love sports and you don't want to do this as a passion career, it's just not going to work out for you in the long run. Now, I'd say in terms of like looking to break in the industry today, get started. There are plenty of, unfortunately, unpaid stuff that you can do in terms of of written and trying to find stuff from an on-air perspective as well. And I think the nice part from a YouTube podcast perspective is, even if it's not going to generate a lot of money, you can still do all of this on your own. It's not like you necessarily need a company to back you. Now, the money is a longer, more in-depth conversation, but the ability to do it is available to everyone.
That's great. Good advice. So here's another one I think it's important. What should journalism majors do in their first year of college outside of the classroom?
That's a good question. I think it relates to first year all the way down through fourth year, is especially if it's on the written side. Get going with the local student media, get going with the Miami Student, get going with WMSR. That was incredibly valuable for me. And also look outside the college bubble. There are numerous, especially from the written side, whatever your team you're a fan of, you can find writing. And I do think that the writing background does matter for on air. I think it provides a really good base and foundation to move forward and become a better on air host. And it matters, at least for me, in terms of scripting and writing descriptions and stuff as well. So I think that getting involved on campus and off campus in terms of experience really matters, because you're going to have that journalism degree, but I've been involved in a little bit when it comes to the job hiring stuff here at Chat Sports. If it's just a journalism degree and you haven't really even written anywhere, even unpaid, you're going to have a very stiff group of competition that you're going to be playing behind the 8 ball with.
Yeah. Well, that's such great advice. So all of those current students who are watching, make sure you're doing stuff. The degree is really, really important, but that extracurricular outside of the classroom work is important too. So make sure you're doing that. So, Tom, what activities or clubs or internships did you do that may have helped you with your career, your future career, and how did you position yourself to get those opportunities?
I started with the Miami Student. That was just applying to be a sports writer and working hard, getting my stuff in on time, and listening to all feedback that came through, going meeting with the editor as often as I could to try and learn more. WMSR was kind of a similar path, put in the time, put in the effort. And then the big one ended up being the Chat Sports internship. And, that was more of a finding time to do pieces as I had the opportunity. It was very much a internship where you get out what you put in, and I put in the effort to get that stuff done, and it paid wonders in the end. The talent and the on-air ability will come. You'll learn, you'll get better as you do more, and the only way to learn and do do better is to put in the time, put in the effort, and really go above and beyond, and have a great work ethic. Not everyone's going to be equally as talented, but everyone can have a really strong work ethic.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's some great advice. So how about this will be the last one before we get to those live questions. So how did your time here at Miami prepare you for your career?
Obviously I thought I was going to do the writing side, and I did not want to pursue the small local paper beat writer route, which I know a lot of people will, and I'm not, taking a shot at that. Just that's not the route I wanted to go. So I had the writing experience. I think I had the, knowing how to write quickly and efficiently is certainly an important part as well. It ended up being that the play-by-play stuff for WMSR and the radio show ended up being a lot more important than what I realized it was going to end up being when we made the pivot from the written content, the website, to the on-air side. So I would say, in terms of everyone out there, finding the written background, finding the on-air, both radio, and if you can get with one of the local TV stations as well as an intern, all that stuff adds up pretty nicely and quickly, because it gives you a good rounded foundation for whatever's out there. I would say don't pigeonhole yourself into just one particular area in the country even, or in terms of what your background is, because the jobs and roles that you come across might not necessarily be what you had initially planned on.
Gotcha. Great. Awesome. Well, those are the ones that we had but now we've got a few that have come in that are live. So remember, those of you who out there are watching, make sure you submit those questions. You can hit the Ask a Question button at the bottom of your screen and make sure you ask those questions. So here's one that comes in from Karen, and she'd like to know, would love to know what SLAM courses you took and or what internships he did as a pathway towards his career. So what were those SLAM courses, and then maybe the internships you might have had? So
long ago, the SLAM courses kind of make me. I don't remember what those were. I do remember the journalism ones a little bit more in terms of the media side. 101. Sure. Professor Siff's stats course was very important, I think, especially as we move more to it's 2021. The internet's what's king. Knowing how to have at least just a baseline in Excel is actually very important. We do formula stuff all the time as a time saver, and that allows us to do more videos as well. Internships was the chat sports one was the predominant internship for me, and then I think the practical experience with WMSR and the Miami Student, even though not technically an internship, were two of the most valuable things that I ended up, doing at Miami.
Awesome. All right, here's the next one. So John wants to know, or says, I have a degree in sports management. Would you recommend a degree in journalism in order to get into sports writing?
John, I don't think it's a necessary mandatory thing, but I would highly recommend it. That degree in journalism will give you a very good background in terms of how to write efficiently. It'll look better when you're first applying for jobs as well. Now you can still, do stuff with the paper without a journalism degree. I think that's a good practical experience. But my suggestion would be, if you want to pursue the sports writing, have a journalism degree and get involved with the paper at Miami, and then also get involved elsewhere, whether it's even just writing for a random blog, for sports blog. Get involved on campus and off campus as well.
Awesome. All right, so Mary Pat wants to know, where is the coolest place you've done a show from?
The college football playoff. We did a show, not last year, obviously, because COVID. Couple years previously, we've done those. We've done them at one of the local golf courses here just to do it when the PGA Tour was here. But the college football playoff, the Tua Tagovailoa game. We were at the media area for that, so we were live from Atlanta for that college football playoff, and then we were also out in San Francisco the year that it was out there. Both of those that was the Clemson-Bama championship game. Both of those have been very, very fun.
That's awesome. I've always wanted to go to one of those games. Hopefully someday.
Yeah.
So here's
Georgia
I've got
Bama was a lot
couple
better
here.
than Clemson Bama.
Yeah, yeah. So I've got a couple here from Chancellor. I'm going
Okay.
to break them up, but so the first one is, how can someone with only creative writing and professional writing experience with no portfolio transition into a writing career, especially without a true journalism experience?
It's a good question. I think that as maybe boring as this answer sounds, it's never too late to start. It might not be a great gig necessarily, but you can start working on that journalism stuff, as soon as you want. And to be clear, the creative writing and professional writing experience will still benefit you. You're still going to have a good background. Now, it does end up being a little bit different, but you can find stuff potentially on the side that, again, unfortunately is probably not going to be high paying, if all, but you can still find things that will kind of get your feet wet and allow you to kind of start building that portfolio as you move forward. Again, it's not a high paying industry, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, but if you love what you do, that's
but you
all
love
right,
what you do, it's not a job. Exactly.
Good. So the second one from Chancellor here is, how can you make the jump to YouTube media companies? Is this mostly based on networking, or things that you can do that make a person stand out?
It's a good question. I'll kind of draw on some of the experience from people that we've hired over the past couple of years at Chat Sports. We've hired obviously I was there at the beginning, and to be quite frank, I don't know if I would have gotten the job if it had been for an on-air versus a writing experience, but who knows? We hired a former writer who kind of transitioned into the on-air side. We hired a TV host who was over in Pennsylvania. He's one of our guys now. We hired a former radio show host as he made that jump. We've hired a play-by-play guy who was doing local radio out in like Wyoming or something. We hired a kid fresh out of college. I've hired a couple of those guys as well. So I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong path. I think what can help make you stand out is find areas where you're able to make your own stuff. You can start your own podcast. You can start your own YouTube channel. You can look around for the unpaid stuff that could introduce you to into the YouTube side. That there are plenty of companies out there now. I think they're finally starting to catch up, who realize, wow, YouTube's a good area that we should be involved in. You can help out within that area. I know that's not like a easy, you do A, B ends up being the result there. But I think in terms of making yourself stand out, there's a lot of stuff that you can do on your own to help get yourself the experience and get yourself comfortable being on a camera.
Gotcha. So Don's curious. He says, your internship appears to be the key to your career path. So how were you able to get that internship?
I think it was Patty Newberry had emailed us, hey, Chat Sports is looking for interns. And I think there might have been one or two other Miami people who did it as well. The internship just kind of popped up in my email one day, and I'm like, cool, write about sports. I'm looking for that. Let's do that. And then in the end, I made it what it was. There were a couple of us in that Chat Sports internship program, and I think 3 or 4 of us ended up being hired. A couple of them, left media. Others have gone on to other things as well. The internship, in terms of what it was for me, was, it was a good opportunity. I made some good connections there, and I did good work and put an effort, and that was noticed when it came time for the job application process.
Gotcha. That's good. So Mary Pat asks, how did you stay programming during COVID and the work from home situation? How did you, I guess, stay busy?
Yeah, so I mean, a bit of a dicey time frame for the company, because we're like, when do the sports come back? We were lucky that in terms of the timing of it all, that we still had NFL free agency, and that's a big time of the year for us. So we were able to still have that type of stuff. What we've noticed over the years is that when you first get going from a company standpoint, off season matters more. As you become bigger and bigger, the games themselves start to make more of an impact from a viewership perspective, and that's where we're at right now for NFL, frankly. But we set up a work from home program for a couple. It might have been 2 months, maybe something like that, when lockdown first hit. I got a green screen, put it up against my wall here, and filmed everything. We had remote producers. It wasn't the best in terms of versus being in the studio with our natural with our lighting and our hookups and connections and everything. So we did work from home for maybe it was 2 months. I don't remember how long it exactly was. Thankfully, our actual studio, the way it was set up during COVID, was we had a lot of space. So we were able to spread out quite easily. We never had a transmitted case at any point, despite having multiple people in the staff, which was nice. We even kind of changed the way we did our 2-person shows with 2 cameras as opposed to 1 camera to allow us to be more spaced out. We've actually found that works better, and that's still our setup today, even as we've kind of gone back more to a normal setup back in the office.
That's good. So you learn something from it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The ability to make changes. So Gil asks, do you follow college sports? Obviously, we've already talked a little bit, especially football, and kind of what we talked about already. What is happening with the major conferences?
Yeah, it's a great question, Gil. I love college sports. I love college football. It's NFL number 1, college football number 2 for me. It's a great way. I'll tell you what, when I was living on the West Coast, I normally had Saturdays off just because our college football coverage wasn't as impactful as our NFL stuff. So I needed to be in the office Sundays. So West Coast was the best for that because I would roll out of bed at like 8:50, something like that, turn on the rest of college game day, and then it was football the entire day. And then the Pac-12 after dark games were normal time. It was nothing short of incredible. So I love college sports. I love college football. And the changes with the major conferences are very, very intriguing as the SEC continues to find a way to just be the college conference right now. I still think college basketball is going to have its place, have its impact there. I do think the NIL stuff is long overdue. Allowing players to capitalize on their likenesses, it's a staple of what the free market should have been for a long time in college football. I think that will, in the end, be a benefit to college football and to the NCAA for as long as they're still around in whatever capacity they look like. I don't know how much longer the Big 12 will be around. If they're smart, and I don't think their leadership is very smart, I think they need to go poach somebody from the AAC, which I think ESPN kind of got caught trying to get the Big 12 schools into the AAC. I'm calling Cincinnati. I'm calling UCF. I'm calling BYU. I'm calling Boise. I'm calling those top tier mid-major, or not mid-majors, the group of 5 schools, and trying to add them because from the Big 12 standpoint, first off, OU, Texas, I think are gone next year. I think that's when that goes down as opposed to 2025 because you're filing for divorce. At some point, you just got to move out. I think that the Big 12 is not in a very good spot right now.
Yeah. So it's actually kind of going off that, do you think the OU Texas piece, meaning they're going to be independent, or are they going to immediately jump into the SEC?
I think they'll jump into the SEC sooner than the 2025 agreed date, just because it makes more sense for them. The new SEC contract will allow ESPN to buy out the Longhorn Network and move them over there. So it's a pretty crazy time, and it's also like the craziest part was that did not leak. Like the biggest college football story in a long time did not leak until it was a done deal. That's insane.
That is crazy. So Chuck wants to know, do you have a favorite athlete or coach that you've talked to, and why?
I think that the funnest coach that I talked to, and I've talked to some NFL ones. Mike McCarthy's kind of boring. The funnest coach for me has actually been Chuck Martin at Miami, because more often, for me at least, when I was covering the team, and I don't know how it is now, there weren't many people there in terms of media. It was me and maybe one of the stringers from Dayton Daily News, and maybe every now and then one of the guys down from Cincinnati. So there were like maybe three of us. So I got to talk to Chuck a lot. But he's fun guy, funny guy. He would give me grief, and it was always a good, entertaining conversation. There were some great Chuckisms, as I term them. I did a film study with him one day, and that was one of the favorite things I've still done, of being able to just the level of stuff I learned from that 3-hour conversation was nothing short of incredible. Athletes wise, I've talked to Big Ben, talked to some of the Cowboys players. I found that the coaches are a little bit more intriguing once you build that comfort level. The most impactful coach I've talked to, though, it was definitely Rico Blasi back when he was still the hockey coach, and that was because he hated me, because I didn't know. I was a freshman who had never done journalism, trying to hold an entire press conference on my own because there was no other media there. Like, that was totally new for me. But it really benefited me because I was not comfortable. I didn't know what I was talking about, so I had to find ways to learn it. I mean, shoot, to learn the sport and to learn the names of the play-by-play guys, I bought a copy of whatever NHL version it was on and created all the Miami players so that I could play and broadcast the games as I was doing it. So Rico never liked me, and I don't blame him. I would hate me too if I were a coach, but he really did teach me a lot about how to be able to do the interview process.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a question I have. You cover the Dallas Cowboys, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So what's your take on the Dallas Cowboys? Because America's team and all this stuff, and they got a pretty serious owner that gets pretty involved. So what's maybe some interesting tidbits about the Cowboys or your work with the Cowboys or interaction with the Cowboys?
Yeah, we have a setup where we're not really on site very often, because that's just not how we're going to generate our interest and our revenue. So news happens thanks to the reporters who were there tweeting it out. Well, it takes them 2 hours to go do a story. Because they're not at their laptops, and I'm sitting in my office cool, here's our video we had out in 15 minutes breaking it down. So the non actually on site has its benefits from that perspective. Now, I'm not a newsbreaker. That's not what my role is. I'm much more of an analyst than I've ever been a radio of news type of guy. You still hear stuff, whatever. That's all well and good, but I'm not trying to do that particular role. So being able to kind of, frankly, it is because I grew up a Cowboys fan, blur the lines of fan and analysis actually is very beneficial for us as a company, because everyone watching is a fan. So they connect a lot more with the fan. Now, I've always taken the approach, and this kind of dates back to my background as a journalism, of being able to stay unbiased. I'm not afraid to advocate for firings of Jason Garrett, who should have been fired 5 years ago before he actually got fired, or be yeah, this was a bad play. I'm not going to sit there and sugarcoat it, because the Cowboys have not won a Super Bowl in 25 plus years. So you have to be honest and objective, because what you can't do is sit up there and say everything's sunshine and roses. It's great. This is their year. And then you come back from a credibility standpoint and go, hey, so it turns out they were bad this year. They won 6 games, and because of this, and that. And then it's yeah, but you said at the beginning. Look, the Cowboys are a fun and entertaining team to cover. Jerry's always got something to say, even as he does take a lesser role more and more within the organization. I don't like Stephen Jones that much. I'm very much concerned about him in terms of taking over full-time, fully, once Jerry, moves on in whatever capacity that looks like. because they don't always handle their contracts particularly well. That Dak Prescott one should have been done 2 years ago, and they cost themselves a good $10 million plus per year because they just kept dragging their feet on it.
Well, speaking of Jerry or Jera, as everyone likes to call
Jariah,
yeah. Have you interviewed him? Have you ever had an interaction with him? And
not with Jerry. No.
Okay.
McCarthy, a couple players, but not Jerry. No.
Is that something you'd want to do at some point?
Yeah, I'm open to it. We've actually found, as weird as this might sound, interviews of players and coaches for the channel aren't actually that great of drivers of viewership.
Interesting.
It puts a lot of time, a lot of effort into a video where I can just break down, whatever was said at the actual press conference ends up being about the same. Huh. So it's an efficiency question too, given just how much other stuff I end up doing beyond the Dallas Cowboys.
Interesting. So kind of going beyond the Cowboys now, Mary Pat is curious. Have you ever done combine coverage?
Yeah, I was at the coverage. Yeah, I was at the combine itself. Not this. Well, there was no combine this past year. Right before COVID hit. Initially, I did the combine there. That was a blast. I had a graduate of Miami a year above me. Charlie Clifford is TV host out for Wish TV in Indianapolis. So, did a lot of stuff with him while we were down there covering stuff. That was when I guess not on air, but talked and met with Jerry and Steven behind the scenes at the combine. Found some, getting some interesting conversations there. And that was a fun experience to just kind of network and do behind the scenes stuff was quite cool. And then the on-air drafts, which I think you mentioned there, Mark, we do draft shows every year, NBA, NFL, even did an MLB one year. Schedule did not work out this year because MLB is bad at planning things.
And that draft is 7 years long.
We did the first round only, and it did
gotcha.
pretty well. As we didn't know anything. We just kind of had some fun with it. Our NFL and NBA draft coverage is the most fun stuff that I think we do, and I love the NFL stuff as well, since I'm a big nerd into that, into the draft side of it. We're every pick. Grades, recaps afterwards. That NFL draft Thursday to Saturday and Sunday too with undrafted free agency. I don't know, I get maybe 10 hours, 15 hours of sleep that entire weekend just because there's so much to do, so much going on. But I just drink Red Bull and I'm fine. Those are the most fun, and it's such a entertaining audience. It's not something that I ever thought I would see. From a YouTube side, we have these things called super chats where people just give us money. And we'll set up little things that if you put this amount of money, we'll do that. And, a lot of it. And if you're 21, of course, in there, we'll set up this amount for a shot on air. It's just it's crazy. They pay us to consume alcohol on air. It's not something you'd ever think as you go through your journalism degree that, oh yeah, this is what I'm end up doing. No, we're doing shotguns on air for YouTube. It's just it's such a wild and fun and safe environment that is just it's unlike anything that I thought I'd be in.
That's awesome. So remind us again, how can we find your stuff, or where does your stuff live? Where can we find Chat Sports?
We've got a ton of different channels on YouTube. Honestly, I'd say just go to youtube.com/chatsportstv. That is our main one. That's got all of our NFL, NBA kind of general coverage provided there. We also have my Dallas Cowboys channel, closer and closer to 100,000 subscribers. Wow. That's youtube.com/CowboysTV. Yeah, I'm excited to get to that 100K mark. And then, I'm personally just hit me up on Twitter at @whatgoingdowney. That's always an easy way to find me there. But honestly, in terms of whatever team you're a fan of, if you go into YouTube and type in, Bengals Chat Sports, we've got a channel. Ravens Chat Sports. That's easy ways to find it. In general, it's not always the case, but youtube.com/teamtv, we tend to have a good amount of those URLs. Or maybe more simple is if you go to chatsports.com/whatgoingdowney. whatever team, Bengals, Ravens, Steelers, Browns, TV, that will actually redirect you to that team's YouTube channel as well.
Awesome. Great. Here, go. One more last live question before I've got some rapid fire questions for you.
And I got time.
Yeah. So what's the largest audience you've had?
I don't remember what our live audience was at one given time. I can look that up actually. Here, I'll do that right now. I've got the analytics to prove it. I know we've done, I think the number one that we had that I remember was we did a watch party for one of the NBA Finals games, and that one did well over 1 million views. So let me just pull up our analytics here, lifetime, and I can sort by views. 2020 NBA Draft Live, and that's just the live, none of the grades or anything. That did 1.3 million views.
Man.
Game 6, Raptors Warriors was 1.2 million, and then 2020 NFL Draft, just the first round, was 1.06. So,
wow.
If you factor in day 2 and day 3, which are technically different, that starts to approach the 2 million views, and shoot, the number of cuts we got out of that as well. I mean, it balloons to just obscene figures during that weekend of the NFL and NBA draft.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think we'll do some to finish up here, Tom. If you're all right, we're going to do some rapid fire questions, or a lightning round, as I like to call it. And these will be more of a Miami, they're Miami/Oxford focus. So just whatever comes top of mind, share it. So, cool. So let's go here. We've got 4 of these. So, what's your favorite place on campus?
Good question. I spent a lot of time down at the football stadium and the hockey arena, so I think that's certainly a good one for me, which is very much maybe a unsurprising answer. But those were the 2 I spent most of my time at.
Awesome. All right. So, what was your favorite place in town, uptown Oxford? What was your favorite place?
In terms of I'll go with bar. I think that makes the most sense there. Mac and Joe's was my absolute favorite. Their mac and cheese bites, which I have been able to find elsewhere, is still probably my favorite food overall.
Awesome. Mac and Joe's is awesome. I agree with that one. What's your favorite bagel from Bagel and Deli?
I always kind of kept it fairly simple. I was never trying to get crazy in terms of what I ended up going with. It was normally just and I forget what it's called these days, just the bacon, egg, and cheese one. I think maybe that was just the original breakfast, or maybe it was the super deluxe, whatever it was. I would just get that because normally I had it in the morning because the line was too long and I was lazy. But those were always my go-to ones. What's the other one? I think it was the Ben's Best or whatever it was. Something along those lines was also really good too.
Gotcha. All right. And last one. What is your favorite Miami memory?
I know my mother-in-law is watching, so I have to be to ensure it. Meeting my wife was definitely the preferred one there. Outside of that, the favorite one I had from a sports perspective, was being able to call the ending of that god-awful Miami losing streak under Don Treadwell, because that's a whole different conversation that I'm happy to get into if we want to do it with Treadwell and how he ruined that program for a little bit. Also calling the NCHC championship on the road for Miami hockey the last time they won that was a pretty awesome experience, because I remember my call and it was a good one as well. And if they'd been able to come back from that playoff, that game with Belpedio diving, making the save, and Zarnik that close to the game tying goal, that would have been a special one as well. But calling the NCHC championship, and of course meeting my wife as well.
That was a good move to say that.
Of course. And it's true. It's true.
Yeah, too. True. Mine too. But I was actually I was at that NCHC championship game. It was a great game.
That was awesome.
That was a lot of fun. And you're right, that Belpedio stop was amazing too.
All-time play.
It was. So that's awesome. Well, that's about all the time we've got. Tom, thank you so much for spending almost an hour with us this afternoon and for being here. We really appreciate it.
Of course. And we mentioned my Twitter earlier at What Going Downey. If anyone out there has more questions or career stuff, feel free to hit me up. My DMs are open. Sometimes I regret that, but that's why they are open.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. And thanks to everyone out there who's watched us today during our webinar. And speaking of our webinars, feel free to check out our other Alumni Association webinars. They're free and open to everybody. And you can get there by visiting the webinar site at alumlc.org/MiamiOH. That's alumlc.org/MiamiOH. So thanks, everyone. I hope you have a great afternoon and a wonderful weekend. And as always, love and honor.